2 years ago, I played a little game called Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It's a game that completely shattered any and all expectations that I may have had for it, while also reminding me why I began playing RPGs at all. It's a title that I still think about to this day. Realistically, there's not much that I could say about it that may not have been stated within that time already, but it is a fun game to discuss regardless. If you are looking for a recommendation, I would simply tell you to click off the video and go play the series right now, no question. But rather than doing some boring review on it, I wanted to use this moment to reflect on the journey that the game sent me on when I began playing it, and the messages that it wanted to convey to us. What I initially thought was going to be a game showcasing the harshness of warfare and why it's bad, turned out to be one that portrays humanity's relationship with time, the fleeting nature of existence, and the very sanctity of life. It's a message that is incredibly relevant now, as it will be for the rest of our lives. I'd also like to apologize in advance, as not only will there be spoilers, I will be bringing up themes of suicide in the video multiple times. If that does bother you, this will be the heads up. Xenoblade 3 is naturally the latter part of an ongoing series that I am very fond of. I was around during the Operation Rainfall days petitioning for the localization for the original Xenoblade, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. Fortunately, it paid off, as Xenoblade is now a household name for Nintendo and has been my favorite RPG ever since. Xenoblade X sold me on the Wii U back in 2015. While its narrative is very lacking in my mind, with a cliffhanger ending that hasn't been resolved yet, it is a uniquely innovative take on the open-world genre, whose heights I feel haven't been quite achieved until the very recently released Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Xenoblade 2 is what pretty much sold me on the Switch, and now I will never forget the beautiful tale of the boy who met the girl he loved and promised to take her to paradise. All of these are large, ambitious open-world games, and while the trilogy itself is connected, they all have proven themselves to be great standalone RPGs that do not require any sort of prior knowledge to enjoy their stories. For those who have not played the game, it's probably best to understand how the world works in Xenoblade 3. There are two warring factions that exist within Ionios, Keves and Agnes. Within these factions are soldiers who only have lifespans of 10 years, after which they must give their life back to their respective queen, who gave birth to them in a ceremony known as the Homecoming. Instilled within these soldiers is an artificial lens within their iris known as a flame clock. The soldiers must fight in order to claim the life force of their enemies to fill these flame clocks. If it is depleted completely, they will die regardless of how much time is left. The system creates a fundamental nature to the war, where soldiers must fight to live, and they must live to fight, even if it is for a mere moment of existence. However, this does not mean the nature of the world is not questioned. The main characters Noah and Mio are specialized soldiers known as off-seers, who are used to mourn the fallen on the battlefield and to pass them on from this world as they did not survive long enough to reach their homecoming. With their role being directly tied to the lives that exist within this world, it's only natural that they would question the essence of death itself and why the world functions as it does.
You think we're even just because both sides do some killing? What good's filling up these flickering clocks in our eyes? It'll never replace the friends we've lost. That's why.
We aren't fighting because we want to.
We're not.
We can see our lives written before our eyes. Fighting is all we have. Is it any wonder we lose loved ones, or have to take them from others? All of us. We have to fight so we can go on living. Just who decided that this was how it should be? If I knew who they were or where I'd...
I know who they are. You'll what? You better listen up now, because the face of your real enemy is...
You've got a real death wish. Maybe I'll take care of you first.
Of course, it is not long until you get an answer to that. Moebius are the main antagonistic force in this game. They initially exist in disguise as consuls that give orders to soldiers from on high, but their main role is to sow chaos and to perpetuate this war for as long as possible. Any and all life force that is retrieved by soldiers is also harvested by Moebius, allowing them to live on indefinitely. Moebius has existed long before the war began, and the war between Agnes and Keves has gone on for centuries. Moebius is the reason the world is in the state that it's in. They are the only ones who benefit from it, and they are the reason that it refuses to change. This is what is constantly referred to in the game as the Endless Now. In order to combat this, a character named Vandam grants our 6 main characters with the power of Ouroboros, which not only allows them to interlink and combine together, but completely removes their flame clock and their reason for fighting each other. Given that this power basically has the potential to completely overturn the current state of the world, the consuls brand the Ouroboros as traitors to be eliminated by the respective colonies.
Ouroboros has no place in this world.
Thus, uniting our protagonists as fugitives to seek out the city of Swordmarch, as requested by Vandam before his passing. The reason they choose to believe Vandam is twofold. Not only did he save our main cast from killing each other, but he himself is 60 years old, far older than anyone should be. With our current knowledge of the world, this fact alone shouldn't even be possible. I won't go terribly detailed on every chapter of this game, as that would take far too much time for a game this large. The majority of the journey is largely spent understanding the nature of this world as you liberate other colonies from their flame clocks and uncover all of the fabrications that form their current perception of it. As progress is made, the cast not only begin to understand their own potential and how much Moebius had been stifling it, but they also inspire hope for the future in other colonies.
I want to destroy our flame clock. Would you mind doing us this one last favor?
It's hardly a problem for us, but why the sudden request?
We heard about a liberated colony from Nopon travelers. That's what got me thinking. There should be more to life than spending it fighting all the time. Being ready to die and actively trying to get yourself killed are two very different things.
Sounds to me like you've been mulling it over.
Now, freeing each of the colonies always leaves the soldiers with the question of how to move forward and what to do now, as they've never really known life beyond warfare. While the main quest usually involves liberating colonies, the side quests are dedicated to seeking a future for the colonies without fighting being a factor in their lives anymore. Not only do these side quests naturally feed into the themes of the main story, but they are completed largely by providing mutual aid through the iris system suggested by Alexandria of Agnes, uniting the people from both sides through the affinity chart, and teaching them how to use their autonomy to live. Now, uniting century-long enemies is definitely the hard part, though.
What is this?
It used to belong to my friend. He always wore it till last year. Yes, he died, fighting against Colony Psi. You animals killed him. Shot him right here. Clean through.
If the political undertones of this game are not obvious by now, I will make them apparent later when it's relevant.
The dead don't think anything. They don't speak. But survivors speak for them, to celebrate their life and death. That's why I'm here.
Before reaching the city, Chapter 3 specifically does highlight off-seeing as a concept. The very ritual of off-seeing in the eyes of the Ouroboros and the other soldiers is often seen as a sort of respect for the fallen, a way to ascribe meaning to the lives that are taken in this world that really lacks any meaning at all. So naturally, when Noah plays the flute for the enemy or some of the most insane villains imaginable, you can imagine Lance not being too happy with it.
Nope, no way. You're not sending him on. You realize how messed up that is?
Huh? You think so?
How do you not? Think about the things this guy did.
He tried to kill us all and rob the soldiers of their remaining life.
You're right. Both of you are right.
Oh, I'll just do it anyway.
Just now, I felt his essence brush past me. It felt just the same as ours. So, I feel I have to do this, you know?
Regardless, the act of off-seeing in the grand scheme of the game is frivolous at best. Much like the act of prayer, it has no meaning outside of what is ascribed to it. But whether or not Lance or even Uni understand or even care about this is irrelevant. Both off-seeing and prayer are just available to us and are valid forms of expression, and simply having the agency to express these feelings in a world that hardly gives you the freedom of choice is ultimately what matters.
It gives a sense of security, lets you think your dead friends are looking out for you from above, alleviating feelings of guilt and of loss. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, okay, but ain't there plenty of people who don't care about that?
What matters is that it is there. You don't need to pay attention. You don't need to do anything. But the way it is designed, if you think about it, it just works. We are told our life is born from the Queen, and to the Queen it returns. However, that's only if you make it to your homecoming. But what of the others? What of those who fall on the battlefield? Nobody knows. Where do they go? Seeing motes rise into the sky serves to dispel any unease. You end up believing, well, they're going somewhere.
But where is somewhere? The Queen's place?
No clue.
You what, mate? That's kind of non-committal for you.
Disappointed?
Nah, not fussed.
Upon reaching Swordmarch, within the walls of the city, they find a civilization that completely shifts their entire worldview and acts as one of many plot twists. Much like Vandom from the beginning of the game, the people here were born naturally and they live normal lives, and they exist outside of the 10-year limit in the war that Moebius perpetuates. They can partake in culture, romance, and they raise families and pursue life goals, and they age naturally. And even within the city's infirmary, they witness humanity at its infancy in what I believe to be one of the most wholesome scenes I've ever seen in a video game. And I really do like Tyon a lot. He's probably my favorite character in this game next to Uni. However, up until this point, you'd be hard-pressed to see him smile or be happy at anything, given the grim tone of this game. But when he saw that newborn for the first time, it was like he was a completely different man.
Let me have a turn! What? This is incredible, Senna.
A lot of what many of us take for granted here is seen as a sort of paradise for the Ouroboros, showing us just how truly messed up Ionios is at this point. It is around here where the Ouroboros slowly begin to realize that maybe life is worth more than the time they had as soldiers, upholding an oppressive system that clearly had nothing for them. Beyond the natural instincts of mere survival, they begin to value life itself as something worth cherishing and protecting.
Monica, what was that word you used? Spouse?
A partner in romance.
The
feeling of having someone very precious to you. That'd be one way of putting it.
Now, I cannot speak on the city without talking about, in my opinion, the most underrated character in this game, Shania. While the off-seers and the rest of the Ouroboros question the state of the world within the context of their war, Shania is the one who constantly questions the state of her own existence outside of it. To put it simply, we're all human beings. We only have one life to live, and we can only be one person. Eventually, we're all going to die and cease to exist someday. It is the natural way of life, after all. Considering how unsatisfied she is with herself, I don't believe it is completely unnatural for Shania to question such things in the same way that the Ouroboros may question the endless now. In some ways, this makes her a pretty effective foil, even if she comes off as deranged and nonsensical to most people. Though for someone like Shania, who constantly seeks perfection in herself, yet never had any real agency in her life, constantly feeling inferior to her military peers for her inability to become Ouroboros herself, whose only living family sees no value in her life outside of upholding the honor of some arbitrary house name that she didn't ask for, in a world that is completely dictated by its ongoing war, it's very easy to see why Moebius' endless now becomes far more enticing to her.
You scum! You've even sold out the city!
Just what the hell do you know? You dream of living out your days in peace. You want to protect the natural way of life. All that shite is a right afforded only to the powerful! What about those who can't live in peace, huh? Are they meant to survive in all this chaos until the very day they die? I have not one thing to my name. I don't even have the power to choose. Screw it.
So much so that she even instills a flame clock within herself with the purpose of being reborn as a brand new being after death. This is another twist I had failed to mention earlier. Soldiers who die before their 10 years are reborn within the cycle without their memories, doomed to repeat it endlessly for Moebius' benefit. And the queens that they are supposedly born from are fakes. And the homecoming ceremony that these soldiers fight so hard for probably isn't as pleasant as the name would imply.
Oh yes. I almost forgot to tell you something. You are now aware of the cycle of rebirth, yes? There is an exception. Those whose flame is snuffed out during a homecoming will not return.
And those like Shania, who would eventually join Moebius' ranks, are people who are truly overtaken by the anxiety that comes from understanding the futility of living.
It's your eyes, that look! You've always looked at me that way! Why did it have to be like this? Why is it always me, standing here on my own?
Shania.
I've had it. I've had it up to here! Shania! Drop it! This isn't what I meant by dad! Don't misunderstand! This is the beginning! Shania!
What I like about Shania is that she highlights the city as not quite being the utopia that the Ouroboros or the audience might view it as. The world Shania lived is filled with struggle, even without Moebius' influence. Children being born from their parents does not mean that they are all loved by their parents. The planet having enough food and housing to satiate everyone living on it does not mean that everyone is fed or has a home. Life is filled with many hardships like this. However, it is within these struggles that one can find meaning, something Shania perhaps fails to realize herself. The difference between Shania and the Ouroboros is that while they both strive to tear down their respective worlds, her mindset ends at its destruction, while the main cast has grown with the resolve to replace the status quo with something far more progressive.
I think I get it now. The meaning behind the smile. I think they were all content with the way it ended. Like they were putting us in charge of the future. Telling us to make a world where everyone can smile. But it just breaks my heart that that was the only smile they could choose. And it really shouldn't have been. The world we have now, it doesn't give us the choice to smile. If the world won't let us choose, outside these narrow bounds, I want nothing more than to rip this world apart. I want to repay those smiles. That's why I'm here.
Shania has done some truly unforgivable things in this game, so I can understand why people would hate her. Though, given her relationship with her late father in Gondor, I simply refuse to believe that she was hopeless. Regardless of whether she had the strength to be a competent soldier, she still had people in her life who still cared about her and her talent as an artist, even if it had no real practical application in a war-torn world like this. But it was ultimately her mother who drove her over the edge, becoming the villain that she is remembered as. Shania is a beautifully written, tragic character, one I feel who doesn't get much credit.
I thought maybe parents would be closer to their kids somehow. Like that warmth we felt would go on throughout their lives. I thought that might have been the answer we were looking for.
It's an illusion. It's a fact of life that the child is born of the parent. But that's all it is.
So everything that we're trying to achieve, is that an illusion too? It's all just a big lie? Senna.
Whether it ends in a lie or not is up to you. We all have to crawl face down in the mud. believing we'll come out smiling.
Mother.
Now, it is very difficult to speak on this game without mentioning the climax that occurred in Chapter 5 and the beginning of Chapter 6, that which the entire game was building up to. It is easily the best sequence I have ever experienced in any form of fiction. I could talk about this for years to come, and I honestly haven't felt an emotional high like this since Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII. But this is also something that is best experienced with as little knowledge of the game as possible. While there are many reaction videos dedicated to this, I don't want to simply spoil it here. However, I wanted to take a look back on a childhood favorite game of mine that the scene reminded me of, and how they both utilized its respective music. It's another game that allowed me to appreciate storytelling like this, and one that'll most definitely show my age. Final Fantasy VI is a game that delivers on a very similar message of hopefulness for the future that Xenoblade does, whether it's Scion's ability to move forward from the loss of his wife and child, or Terra's discovery of love in a world that has none of it. However, there's a very special scene that this game is famous for, and that would be the play of Draco and Maria at the Opera House. It is a tale of a woman who was put into an arranged marriage with a man from an Eastern kingdom after they had succeeded in battle against the West. But her true love Draco from the West has gone missing. One of the main characters, Celeste, is tasked with playing Maria and performing a solo atop the castle. Celeste is a soldier of the Gestalian Empire, which has committed many atrocities and war crimes across the land, and yet she is slowly developing affection for Locke, a treasure hunter who aids the Returners, a rebel group tasked with fighting against the Empire. The first verse of the song is meant to be reflective of her current state of mind. She knows the Empire is doing awful things, but even siding with the main party doesn't absolve her from her crimes. But is she even doing the right thing at all? Is there even a path forward for someone like her? Does she even deserve happiness? What should she do? The second verse is meant to illustrate that Celeste has found her resolve, and no matter what path she takes towards the future, she will dedicate herself to it unflinchingly, unwaveringly, and without fail. A solemn vow signified by the tossing of her bouquet over the balcony. Despite how dated the SNES is at this point, this scene was made beautifully, and even more so in the Pixel remaster. So when Kefka, the main villain, succeeds at bringing forth the apocalypse onto the world and robs everyone of their hopes, this song takes on an entirely different meaning when it's used in the scene where Celeste makes the painful decision of taking her own life. The image of her body being tossed off that cliff, reflecting the vow she made on that very stage, and seeing Celeste at her absolute lowest was extremely heartbreaking. And it is even more impactful that despite all of this, Celeste survives and ultimately finds her reason for living. Of course, music in Xenoblade 3 is used in a similar way. The melodies of the off-seers is what gives them purpose, so the act of off-seeing in the eve of Mio's homecoming becomes all the more painful once they understand what that actually means.
Our lives were like our music. Always in our hands, under our control. I wasn't facing the truth. Even if I could reach people, I wouldn't be able to save them. I should have known that. It's unbearable. Seeing life slip away from you. Even though they're right there.
Hey. When the two of us first met, you asked me if I wanted to survive.
Yeah?
I replied, I didn't mind either way. Now I want to live. To live and learn a whole lot more. Noah, there's so much for us to see.
Finally. You called me by my name.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I guess I felt that if I did, my heart would downright break. Because I'd be admitting the truth.
Mio.
But you know, these feelings that grew within me, they're thanks to you. That's why you're not allowed to say it's been for nothing. You've enriched my life, Noah. That's clear now. You know, I don't want this to be it. If I were given the chance, if this road I've walked were to keep on going, I'd like to spend that time with my Noah.
Pick it up. You're an off-seer, so send her. What's wrong? Go on, send her. Isn't that your role? Isn't she your Mio?
To highlight more on Moebius, the majority of them were not meant to be full characters as much as they were meant to be archetypes with the purpose of protecting the current status quo, which I think is fine. Following up Malos is not an easy task.
Indeed!
N, the game's strongest villain, fleshes out Noah beyond that soft-spoken samurai philosopher that he usually is. Despite the mask that he wears, I'm sure N's identity was meant to be obvious the moment you saw him. Joining Moebius was due to him being unable to stand a world where his beloved Mio was doomed to die over and over again, thus seeking comfort in the very system that caused his trauma to begin with, in order to hold on to her forever. Though I feel he takes so much pleasure in screwing with Noah specifically, mostly to stroke his own ego. To him, joining Moebius was the correct choice, which proves that he has risen above his former self. He no longer needs to fear Mio dying, as the Endless now has alleviated that anxiety. As shown with those flashbacks, the fate of the world didn't matter as long as he can preserve the woman that he loved most.
In the course of a lifetime, a man will see uncountable meetings and partings. Yet, as your life's candle sputters and dies, whose face is it that rises to greet you? Happy is the man who can sleep in the comfort of the smile he sees then. No, I don't wish for forever. Even just for one moment. It's enough if it's with her. And yet, what is the man to do who has not been afforded that chance? The road stretches on without end. I cannot but walk down it. As long as I keep walking, I can hold out hope that one day the time may come when I see her smile again. That hope keeps me afloat.
In some ways, this is very similar to Jin in Xenoblade 2. The game's plot largely focuses on the relationship between drivers and blades, and the memories that unite them. Blades are tied to their driver's lifespan. The blade returns to the core crystal without their memories when the driver dies. Then, they wait for a new driver to resonate with them, and the process repeats. Much like Rex and Pyra, Jin and Laura is another example of blade and driver who fell in love. Over a century ago, before the events of the game started, Laura gets fatally wounded in the Aegis War. Jin, who didn't want to lose the memory of the one he loved most, performed the taboo of becoming a flesh-eater, consuming Laura's cells and gaining eternal life, preserving the memory of the one he loved most, but living endlessly with the lingering regret of his own sin. And the only one around to provide him an out and a means to express that growing negativity towards the world that robbed him of everything just so happened to be the Big Bad himself.
But that man, he'd lost everything. He no longer wanted anything. He didn't even want to live anymore. And despite that, his life was the one thing he hadn't lost. Because he couldn't!
Moebius D, on the other hand, is not all that deep. He is the first one to show up, and his relevance to Uni is foreshadowed as early on as the first chapter, though I believe D was just meant to be a very scary guy. But let me explain.
Ever had dreams? Dreams of dying, of being slaughtered.
While the world itself is defined by its war, everyone only engages with it because they must. But D is different. When D was alive, he'd kill soldiers regardless of what side they were on, and even collected their severed heads for enjoyment. He wasn't fueled by an instinct to survive like everyone else. D killed people simply because he loved to do it, and the fact that the system could create someone as repulsive as this, and even have them join Moebius so that they can do it endlessly, was meant to be frightening in and of itself.
Don't you want to savor it? The sweet taste of a life cut short.
The absolutely psychotic Moebius X gives insight on the colony ranks and why they exist. With each increase in rank, the consuls provide better equipment and rations to the soldiers, while the highest gold rank colonies are supposedly excused from war entirely. This is a pretty meager incentive, but it only works because the war effort is the only thing in life these soldiers have ever known.
You humans, you need some kind of goal in your little lives. You want to give your blades an upgrade? You want to eat some nice food? Or you want to live longer?
While there are many rumors surrounding Gold Rank's mysterious disappearances, X makes it very clear that Moebius murders and harvests these colonies behind closed doors as they no longer serve a purpose. Meanwhile, Moebius Y is depicted as a sort of mad scientist with a god complex who tends to look down on everyone, and is actually the creator of the flame clock itself.
Since you vermin are no longer bound by the flame clocks, my Moebius power sadly holds no sway over you. Ergo, at this late hour, I will bring my mind, spirit, and flesh to bear, and batter you all into oblivion!
X highlights the perpetual illusion of success through a system that is specifically designed to work against you. while Y portrays the arbitrary nature of systems that govern and oppress people's lives, which are only present to benefit those who are currently in power. In many ways, the endless now they maintain is no different than our own late-stage capitalist system we find ourselves in, one that commodifies human lives and prioritizes profit and endless growth in order to justify itself.
I'm not stealing from them. I, as Moebius, have the right to do with the flame clocks as I please. You may hurt me as much as your heart's desire, but where there is life and vitality, I'm afraid I shall not fall. Come now. Why don't you give it your best shot? And have at me! If you think you can.
However, given that the annihilation events, those incidental and massive explosions that leave entire indents on the planet, one of which can be seen on the box art itself, they're just one of many symptoms of Moebius's attempts to delay inevitability. It shows that their system is still unsustainable despite how infinite it is. The political philosophy behind this is very blatant and effective. It's no coincidence that the villains are allegorical to a far-right fascistic regime. The life force of the soldiers absorbed by the flame clocks in Moebius is obviously meant to represent the surplus value of their labor that is constantly being stolen from them, while the liberation of colonies and providing of mutual aid across all of them is effectively socialism in motion.
The words of an idle man who orders others around. Or the words of rebels who risk their lives for us. Which do you think is worth more?
Or at least socialism as I understand it, which is the collectivist ideology with the intent to maximize individuals within society by freeing them from exploitation and unjust hierarchy. Which is basically the whole plot of this game. Uni even quotes Karl Marx himself, but it actually goes far beyond that. Even in Sagiri's Ascension quest, they actually turn a prison into public housing, fit with its own canteen that you can eat from and acquire even more combat buffs. In a lot of ways, it feels as though the writers really do mean what they say here, and aren't just paying lip service to the hope for the future trope that the genre is known for.
There are two roads set before every individual. The left, the right. What lies down the road you choose? Is it hope or despair? It repeats and repeats as you make countless endless choices. You too, like everyone, have been making them all along. If the results satisfy, that is well and good. But if they do not satisfy, what then? Will you weep, battered by grief, or howl, seething with rage? Have you never prayed that time would simply stop? Have you wished the now would last forever? Your two lives, thriving and persisting far beyond homecoming, surpassing the system of the world. I was fascinated, even beguiled by you. My name is Zed, the ruler of this world. I shall grant your desire.
The oppressive system that exists in Xenoblade 3 is Zed's design. He is effectively the world's god, for lack of a better word, and he completely froze the world's sense of time in fear of what the future may look like. One could play devil's advocate and say that Moebius is the reason the world is still in place. Freezing everything prevents the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 from collapsing into themselves, creating a large-scale annihilation event that could wipe out both of them.
If you restart Origin, time in perpetuity will flow once more. The opposing worlds will overlap. What lies beyond is oblivion. You ought to be aware of this.
But it also shackles the inhabitants to a mere 10 years of life defined by conflict that they are unable to escape from. However, you've essentially torn apart all of the world's lies at this point, so entering Origin is the moment you face the ugliness that put these fabrications together.
Her 10 years is a mere glimpse. We now know the importance of true choice. We'll build it for ourselves. A world with the freedom to choose.
Freedom is nothing more than fiction, a deception. Those with power, those who can choose, think nothing of it. What then of those who cannot choose? What about the meek and frail? Not everyone is granted as many options as you all have. Will you share? Give them some of yours? Will you call that charity? Or compassion? Will you show it? Imagining them who are granted it to be thus satisfied? Imagining not a piece of wretchedness to remain? Making the best possible choices under duress, living the best life. There are no losers in the world I offer. With a turn of the clock, anyone can be a winner, given the time.
The only thing we ever do is take lives! There is no winning!
Zed is not a person per se, but he's characterized as a concept, a collective desire for stability taken to its worst extremes. If the Endless Now is meant to be allegorical to an extremely far-right system that is held together through oppression, Zed is meant to be the pinnacle of that machine. He is the one that has obtained the ultimate eternity, and yet he could do nothing with it. He held all of the power in the system, but in the end, he is still in that system. Zed couldn't see life beyond the narrow confines of the stagnation he created, and ultimately that became his downfall.
And when you cannot choose, what then? In that desperate moment, who will be there to soothe you? The self is all that exists. As such, the only cure for despair is total oblivion. That is the face of the world.
Zed and the rest of Moebius aren't something that invaded Ionios from outside of it. Much like fascism, it was a construct created by humanity in fear of losing what they have in the moment and refusing to accept change. The game means to imply that there will always be a spark of Moebius within all of us, but it is only when that spark becomes a flame that Moebius is born. Nothing lasts forever, of course. Life is fleeting, but there will always be a longing for everything that we've ever known and loved. And perhaps this is also why the ending of the game is so bittersweet. Xenoblade is a lot of things. However, this is a series about life. It is one that polishes and perfects the thoughts and ideas that initially took root from Xenogears in the 90s. It is a series that speaks upon the positive and negative aspects of life that I think about on a daily basis, and confirms to me that they are both normal and valid. It is a series that understands that the world is not in a good spot right now, but will be inherited by future generations regardless. It is a series whose message wants young people to really make a difference in a world that is clearly oppressing them, because it is merely the gift of life that allows them to make that difference. And most of all, it is a series that has reminded me at my lowest that life is full of surprises, but it is those surprises that make it worth living. It is why Noah became an off-seer to begin with. It is why Shulk abandoned godhood to place his faith in the living, and it is even why someone as divine and as limitless as the Aegis would still beg the architect, her father, for the miracle of simply being with the one that she loves most. This is not a series that everyone could get into, but has a lifelong message that anyone can get behind. Xenoblade is an inspirational series, one that possesses the innovation that Nintendo is known for, and is a modern example of what the Golden Age had provided us. But for me, Xenoblade is the pinnacle of the genre, and the generation's finest.
Roads stretch out before us. So many paths. Which do you choose? That's up to you. Sometimes you might run astray. You'll stop, maybe cry in frustration. But you know, that's all right. For the roads, they go on without end. So look up, face forward, toward your chosen horizon, and just walk on.
If you made it this far into the video, then thank you. I was hoping to turn this into a discussion, of course. I know I didn't really talk about any of the main characters or their specific arcs, anything regarding the battle system, or even future redeemed, but that is also what the comment section is for. Is there anything that I missed that you may have liked or disliked about this? Did I hit on anything insightful? Is my interpretation of the events off in any way? Or have you even played Xenoblade at all? I do want to do more videos like this, just talking about the games that I've played throughout the years. Whether I like them or not, I think it would be pretty fun. This can also include things that are very recent, whether that's Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, Zenless Zone Zero, Visions of Mana, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel again. I'm totally open to it. Anyways, let me know what you think. Give the video a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may appreciate it. And finally, be safe, be kind, and be well.